First thing I wanted to talk about is the legal tip of the week if you're a business person. And even if you're not a business person, this may apply to you as well. And that is what are called releases. Now, what is a release? A release is something you sign that releases another party from liability. Basically, you're waiving or giving up any claim against them legally. And now, when would this come into play? Well, let's say, for example, you've got a tenant in a property, and they had a dispute with you about rent or about the security deposit or some other claim, and you decided to resolve it without going to court. And maybe you even gave them some money and called it a day. Well, if you don't get a release from that person, they can always come back and invent some claim in the future, and it could be years and years later depending on the statute of limitations for that claim. So what I recommend you do is whenever you settle out of court with anybody, whether it be a tenant, a buyer in a contract, a seller, any party to anything in business or in personal life where you're resolving that what could potentially be a lawsuit, get the other party to sign what's called a general release of liability. It's a very simple form. You could find it on the internet. Now, typically in a dispute, if they have a lawyer, they may request a release from you, and that's called a mutual release, which is more than fine depending on what you're giving up or what you're waiving. But just make it very important when you settle out of court with anybody over money or over a claim or over any dispute, get that party to sign a general release of liability. It is a notarized document. It is a sworn document that if they come and sue you later, you show up in court with that release and the judge is going to toss their claim out because they've waived everything. And make sure you're specific in that release as to what they're waiving and spell out. They're waiving specifically their claim against you for a property, a contract, a security deposit, and any and all other claims. Okay? So again, if you Google on the internet, you could find the form. It's not a very particularly difficult form. Just make sure, number one, it's specific, and number two, there is consideration for the release. What does that mean? Well, if someone's going to release you from liability, what did they get as consideration or in return for that release? So even if it's $5, $10, a promise not to sue them, whatever, make sure you state the consideration in that general release. Excellent tip. It's going to avoid you a lot of liability for future claims that you didn't think were going to come back and bite you in the future, that you thought you resolved but ended up being a nightmare and ended up in court. So use that tip. It's a very good one.